If you were in a dictatorship, what would you risk to hold on to your humanity? Can propaganda be used to completely erase dissenting thought? How does technology influence our perception of reality? Those questions and more will be explored in this episode, a conversational deep dive into Chapter 1 of the novel From Trumerica with Love by Logan Emery Emerson. From Trumerica with Love is a modern retelling of George Orwell's 1984 as reimagined in a current-day version of America ruled by leader for life, Donald Trump. Here is Sharna and Damien's conversation.
All right, so ready to dive into From Trumerica with Love.
Absolutely. Let's do it. This first chapter is a doozy.
It really is. Okay, so we're looking at Logan Emery Emerson's book, From Trumerica with Love. And it's, well, I guess you could say it's a modern take on Orwell's 1984.
Yeah, definitely a modern spin on it.
And pretty terrifying when you really start, picturing it, you know?
Oh, absolutely. Yeah. Taking our current anxieties about things like, surveillance, propaganda, how divided everyone is politically, and then projecting those anxieties into this future that feels, well,
way too plausible.
Exactly.
What if this is the path we're headed down? So it's July 10th, 2024, and the doomsday clock is, get this, less than 2 minutes to midnight.
Not very reassuring.
Not at all. And the U.S. is now Trumerica with, wait for it, 379 states. 379. It's wild. Anyway, we're dropped right into the action with Liam. He's our protagonist, living in Laramaga Palm City. And right off the bat, Emerson hits us with these details. They're almost subtle at first that just scream oppression.
Oh, yeah. You've got the True Family posters everywhere you look, those creepy eyes following you. And don't forget the portals. Always there, always listening.
Okay, those portals, they seriously creeped me out. Imagine living with that feeling of being watched 24/7, even in your own home. It's like any semblance of privacy is just gone.
And that's what's so unnerving about it. It really gets at our own anxieties about data privacy, the government overreaching, how much power technology actually has in our lives. It begs the question, how much are we willing to give up in the name of, quote unquote, security?
Exactly. So we've got Liam, he's 38, works for this place called the Bureau of Facts, which immediately sounds super ominous, and he's already feeling totally suffocated by this system. And what does he do? He buys a journal, a real physical journal, to write in.
Which in this world might as well be a declaration of war.
Right. It's like this crazy act of rebellion, and it makes you wonder, well, what would you write about if you were keeping a secret journal in a world like that? What truths would you be compelled to get down?
It speaks to this fundamental human need to, express yourself, to have some space, even if it's just on paper, where you can be honest, even if it means risking everything. And what's really interesting is that Liam mentions writing for future generations, hoping that things will be different for them.
There's something really powerful about that, isn't there? This tiny flicker of hope in the middle of all this bleakness. Speaking of bleak, did you catch the description of the cityscape? Mega tall skyscrapers everywhere, including a windowless Trump Tower that's 2 miles high, and the propaganda.
Off the chart.
Off the chart.
That scene where Liam is at the movies and the entire audience is cheering as this drone
tell me about
is
it.
Taking out a family trying to cross the border. It was brutal. It's scary how easy it is to manipulate people with fear and nationalism.
It reminded me of this article I read about how algorithms on social media can create echo chambers where people only ever see information that reinforces their existing beliefs. It's like we're already being fed a curated version of reality in a way.
Exactly. And that's what this novel does so well. It takes these trends we're seeing today and pushes them to the extreme. Makes you confront the consequences.
It's like a warning, right? Like, hey, look what could happen. But even in this world, Liam finds these little ways to rebel.
Buying the journal. Hiding a stash of illegal vodka.
Right.
It's almost like those small acts of defiance are what keep him human.
That's such a good point. Though you have to wonder, how do those tiny acts of rebellion stack up against the massive displays of control they have in this world? Like those victory rallies Liam describes.
Those rallies are fascinating. Pure psychological manipulation. They're engineered to evoke this intense feeling of, collective euphoria, to squash any dissenting thought with this overwhelming wave of patriotism.
It's like they're trying to brainwash people into submission.
Exactly.
Liam even talks about feeling physically ill during one of these rallies, like his body's rejecting the whole thing.
That's his inner self, that core of individuality, refusing to be silenced. It's a reminder that even when it feels like everything is pressing down on you, There's still a part of us that wants truth.
And that's where we leave Liam at the end of this first chapter, clinging to that tiny bit of hope, that desire for something more, even though he's surrounded by, well, darkness is an understatement. Before we get to chapter 2, though, there was this one thing at the very end of chapter 1 that I wanted to ask you about.
You mean when Liam mentioned seeing Gemma and Brannon at the victory rally?
Yes. Who are these people? What's their deal?
Well, the first chapter doesn't really tell us much about them, who they are, what their deal is, and I think that's on purpose. Like Emerson is throwing these little breadcrumbs in to keep you guessing, make you want to figure them out.
Totally. It's working. I'm hooked. But, okay, them being at that rally makes me think they have to be tied into this whole power structure somehow.
Definitely possible. The rallies seem to be a huge part of how Trumerica keeps everyone in line. It's like that's where the propaganda is the most effective, where fitting in is everything.
And it's where Liam seems the most conflicted internally. He even says he feels physically sick watching everything that's happening.
Right. It's like his body is rejecting the whole charade, even if his mind's still trying to make sense of it all. That part where he talks about escaping to the bathroom just to get away from it all, even for a minute.
It's a small act of rebellion, but man, is it powerful.
It really emphasizes the psychological impact this kind of oppressive system can have on a person. That constant pressure to conform, to not even think about disagreeing. It's got to do something to you.
You would absolutely explode. Liam has his journal, though. It's the one place he can actually be honest with himself, get those doubts and fears down on paper.
And what's so interesting is that he's writing for an audience he may never meet. It's this amazing testament to hope, to the belief that even in the darkest times, things can get better.
It really makes you think about what you would leave behind, the stories you tell and how they could affect people.
Absolutely. And it reminds us that even these small acts of courage, like Liam choosing to write, can have a bigger impact than we can even imagine.
It's like sending a message in a bottle, right? Tossing it out there and hoping it washes up on shore someday where it can make a difference.
That's a great way to put it. And it speaks to the power of stories. Even when information is being controlled, twisted, stories can still get through, plant those seeds of doubt.
So we're leaving chapter 1 with Liam as this, kind of everyday hero just trying to deal with these insane circumstances.
Yeah, he's not some soldier or revolutionary. He's just a normal guy caught in this crazy situation, trying to hold on to what makes him human.
And he's doing it all with a pen and a notebook, hoping against hope that what he writes will outlive him and reach someone who needs it.
It makes you wonder, what would you risk to hold on to your own humanity if you were in his shoes? What stories would you feel like you had to tell?
Those are some deep questions for sure. But, okay, before we go down that rabbit hole, can we please circle back to Gemma and Brannon? I have a feeling they're going to be important to Liam's story, and I need to know more.
I agree, there's something there. And the fact that they're at that rally, which is such a symbol of Trumerica, tells me they're not just random people. They could be allies, enemies, who knows?
It's like we're in this political thriller, but with this philosophical edge, It's surveillance, it's propaganda, secrets on top of secrets. So I'm not going to lie, this book has gotten under my skin.
That's what good dystopian fiction does, though, right?
Yeah.
It takes what we know, what we're familiar with, and just twists it enough to make you question everything.
For sure. And I keep coming back to Liam's journal, like that just being this act of defiance. So simple, but in this world, it's huge.
It is. It really speaks to how important it is to hold on to your own narrative, your own truth, even when everything around you is screaming at you to just give in.
Yeah, like in a world where every little thing you do is being watched, controlled, even writing something down, it's almost like taking back a piece of yourself.
And not just taking it back, but holding on to it, protecting it for the future. That's what I find so powerful about Liam deciding to write for those future generations.
Yeah.
It's this act of hope, believing that even if things don't get better for him, maybe, just maybe, his words can help someone else down the line.
It's like planting a seed in the dark and hoping it finds a little bit of light.
Exactly. And it really makes you think, what stories do we have inside us that are worth telling, that are worth sharing, even if it's just with ourselves? What truths do we need to hold on to remember, to stay human in a world that can feel, well, dehumanizing?
Those are some heavy hitter questions. And I think that's what makes this deep dive more than just us talking about a book. It's about us looking at our own lives, our own values, and how we move through a world this complicated.
It reminds us that even when it seems like there's no winning, when it feels like you're surrounded by darkness, there's always a choice. We can choose to give in, to let the pressure get to us, or we can resist, hold on to our own truths, even if it feels like the tiniest flicker in the void.
And maybe, just maybe, that little flicker is enough to spark something bigger.
Or at the very least, keep that hope for something better alive.
Well said. Well, I think it's safe to say we've resurfaced from this deep dive, and I've got to say I'm feeling all the feels right now. Uneasy, for sure, but also oddly hopeful. Like, if Liam can hold on to himself in the face of Trumerica, then maybe, just maybe, there's hope for us all, right?
I think that's the perfect place to leave it. Cautiously optimistic and with a renewed appreciation for those individual stories, the ones that challenge us, inspire us, and ultimately stick with us.
Absolutely. And hey, who knows, maybe somewhere out there, Liam's still writing, still holding on to that hope. And maybe, just maybe, his words will find their way to the people who need them most.
And on that note, I think it's time we all step back into our own stories, taking those lessons we've uncovered, those questions we've raised with us.
Until next time, keep those brains buzzing and those journals closed. You never know when inspiration might strike or when the world needs to hear what you have to say.
Logan Emery Emerson's dystopian novel, From Trumerica with Love, is available now from bookstores everywhere. Join us for the next episode, a conversational deep dive into Chapter 2 of this reimagining of George Orwell's 1984. In that episode, Sharna and Damien explore questions such as, what can Orwellian themes show us about contemporary issues in America? Thanks for listening.